So hello, everyone. This is Brandon from freestatecolorado.com. Also have Michael Vance, Legislative Director of the Libertarian Party of Colorado. This is our third Zoom call this year during 2024's legislative session. Every Sunday night, we meet on Zoom and we'll soon be live streaming, going over the legislation of the week, talking about ways you can get involved, show up at committee hearings, speak on bills, reach out to your legislator, and try and have an impact on what's going on down at the state capitol. Michael, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Very well, thank you very much. Perfect. So we'll go ahead and start here. So today is January 21st, 2024. So last week we talked a little bit about these smart committees that were going on. There's still several of them going on this week, but for the most part, things are starting to ramp up. The first couple weeks of the legislative session, everything's just kind of getting started, presentations, committee assignments, all of that. But here we go in terms of actual bills being heard in committees, pretty much Monday through Friday, primarily Monday through Thursday in general. There is, of course, some on Friday, but Monday through Thursday seems to be when the most of the action is. So this will be recorded and posted on YouTube for under Free State Colorado. So feel free to take any screenshots. It's all public information, of course. And then please put any questions in the chat. Well, let's go ahead and look at Monday. So Monday, as you know, in the morning, the House and the Senate meet as a committee as a whole. Upon adjournment, it can sometimes be as early as 10 a.m., maybe 11 a.m., somewhere around there usually when they adjourn from the committee at the whole. So it's a little tough for people who want to go down and speak at one of these committee hearings because it's not a definite set time. So it's something you really have to be there early for, show up at the House or the Senate, see when they adjourn, and then go over to that committee room. So on Monday, January 22nd, 2024, upon adjournment, there will be the joint state, civic, military, and veterans affairs. So joint means both the House and Senate are meeting together. Joint finance as well at 1:30, and they're going to be doing those Smart Government Act presentations. Should be some interesting information from government agencies presenting to the legislators. Public comment is available. Something I learned last week. If people want to go down there, of course, all of these will be recorded online on the legislative website. You can go in and at least listen to these presentations. So Monday, 1:30 p.m., there's the House Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee. This will be the first committee of the week that is going to be hearing some specific legislation. So specifically, House Bill 1032 to extend wild horse population management timeline, and 1024 extend outreach campaigns wildlife risk mitigation. Nothing we're really going to talk about on those two, unless you have something, Michael, but really, there's so many bills to cover. We're only going to cover some of the ones that we find the most important. Of course, that varies. Everybody has some different opinions, but Michael, anything on these two bills?
I don't have anything at this moment. I mean, at least the wild horse population management isn't additional wolf relocation or anything like that. So we got more important fish to fry.
Right. And that bill, I know wild horse management is pretty interesting topic, at least for me, but all that bill really does is extend the timeline to 2025, in which they can implement this program, this wild horse population management program. So it's more of a housekeeping bill, giving this group more, this task force, if you will, if that's what they are, more time to kind of come up with something. So same with the other bill. So let's move on. Monday also at 1:30 p.m., the Senate Judiciary will be meeting as well, and that's the last committee of the day. There will be some interesting bills being heard. Nothing that I'm really wanting to talk about too much, just mostly studies, studying metrics, working groups, these kind of things. Of course, these groups have influence on policy, so if you're interested in any of these topics, could be interesting to show up or tune in online to listen to these committee hearings, but nothing I think we're going to talk about from Monday. Let's move on to Tuesday here. So on Tuesday, we have the Joint Business Affairs and Labor. So that's both the Senate and the House meeting together upon adjournment of both the Senate and the House. Some more Smart Government Act presentations, which should be very interesting, I imagine, for both of these committees, the Local Government Housing and House Transportation, as well as the Business Affairs and Labor. But mostly presentations, no bills actually being discussed or voted on at this time. Tuesday at 1:30, there is another bill being heard, or another committee being heard. Looking here, the or House Judiciary at 1:30. There's going to be a lot of bills being heard that day. Um, Michael, anything on any of these bills that you'd like to talk about?
Nothing right now, no.
Yeah, interesting topics, but nothing that stands out too much in terms of anything we want to get into on this Tuesday House Judiciary Committee. I'm sure very interesting. I did think 1079 was kind of interesting. So persons detained in jail on emergency commitment. Basically, this bill would say that you can't send somebody who's on an emergency commitment being held because maybe they're on drugs and they're having some sort of crisis, some sort of issue. They can't just be sent to a jail. Right now, jails are kind of a last resort. If the proper medical facilities are already full, then they can send them to a jail. This would completely eliminate that option for law enforcement or medical professionals to send somebody to a jail, detain them there if they're having some sort of drug issue. So interesting one there, but nothing too crazy. We'll go ahead and move on here to Wednesday. So Wednesday, some more joint committee hearings, the Senate and the House, housing, local government, transportation, meeting there to discuss the Smart Government Act presentations. And then, of course, upon adjournment, the Senate Agriculture and Natural Resources, House Agriculture and Natural Resources will be meeting as well. Now, at 1:30 on Wednesday, there will be the House Health and Human Services meeting. I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but the legislative website's been rough updating this year so far. There's been a lot of broken links. Agendas aren't showing up properly like they normally would, but I was able to track this down to see what they're going there. There's not a lot of information. Interesting to see a couple bills being heard with no co-sponsors. Um, Fertility coverage for health plans. I believe it's already covered mostly, but they want to extend that, uh, take away somebody's ability to, not provide this healthcare coverage for fertility coverage. Bill of Rights for foster youth seem kind of interesting, just kind of allowing foster youth to have more participation in the hearings that they're going through, but nothing too at stake with our liberty, I suppose, that we would like to discuss. Continuing on Wednesday, Wednesday is a very busy day down at the state capitol. Lots of committee hearings. The Joint Judiciary Committee. There wasn't an agenda online at the time. I think it might be up there now, but it's just presentations as well. And then at 1:30, another joint committee hearing where they're doing more presentations as well. So kind of some housekeeping at the beginning of this legislative session, this first couple weeks, going through these Smart Government Act presentations. Moving on to Thursday, January 25th. Upon adjournment, there's the House State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee. As many of you know, that is the kill committee. So there is some legitimate reasons to send a bill there, but for the most part, the Democratic majority, if they want to stop a bill, they send it here, and that's where it goes to die. So a lot of the legislators serving on this committee are maybe very safe seats, so they can kill a bill that might be popular with their constituents, but not necessarily going to affect them come election time. Thought this bill was interesting. It seemed like a good one. Um, from Representative Bockenfeld. This was House Bill 241026, Local Government Taxpayers Bill of Rights Prior Voter Approval Requirement. I'll just read this summary here. The bill requires that a local government that retains revenue in excess of its Tabor limit on fiscal year spending or property tax revenue pursuant to a waiver election held prior to November 9th, 2020 must resubmit the ballot issue from that waiver election to the registered voters of the local government for reapproval by the November 2029 local elections. If the measure is not approved by voters, any approved waiver to keep excess Tabor revenue will end starting in the following fiscal year after the election is held. So what that really means, to kind of simplify it, right now, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, statewide and in a few counties and local communities, limits how much revenue the government can collect. If the government collects too much tax money, they're legally obligated to send it back in the terms of some sort of refund mechanism that Tabor outlines. Unfortunately, local governments have been able for many years to convince their voters to give up their Tabor protections. And that's what this means is these waiver elections where voters give the local government permission to keep more of the tax money than they otherwise would be allowed to under the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. So it looks like what Representative Bockenfeld was doing with this was to kind of restore some of those Tabor protections to the counties or communities that maybe had given them up in the past, requiring them to get reapproval on it. And of course, any bill like this that's going to maybe strengthen taper or extend taper protections is going to be killed by the Democratic majority, as we're seeing this bill being assigned to the Kill Committee this Thursday. Michael, any input on this one?
No, I just think it's a disappointment that something like this is going to the Kill Committee. Is there how I guess my question to you is, have you ever seen a Kill Committee bill go to the Kill Committee and then be successfully passed and move
No.
on to the you've never seen it?
No, unfortunately, all the legislators know how they're going to vote. Before the committee starts, they get that information from their leadership, from the speaker or the majority leaders, and tell them, this is a bill we've all basically decided to kill as a caucus. And so, no, I mean, the only example I suppose would be, if you have somebody like maybe an outlier legislator who might want to buck the system a little bit. We're seeing a couple more of these last year or so, like a Representative Epps or somebody like that. I could see her or somebody along those lines getting in there and, hey, you wanted me to kill this bill? I don't care. I'm going to vote for it anyway. But we haven't really seen that happen. So um, if it's in the committee, there's a 99.9% chance it's going to die
Makes
unless
sense.
there's a legitimate reason to send it because it's actually a state or civic or military or veterans affairs issue, then it might be sent to that committee and pass. But really, under the circumstance that it has to be there's a legitimate reason why they assign it to that committee. Otherwise, they just assign it there and kill it. All right, well, let's move on.
Mhm.
So Thursday, also at 1:30 p.m. Here, there's the House Business Affairs and Labor Committee. They're going to be talking about regulating the sale transfer of sodium nitrate. I do want to mention that one. There was an article on that one this last week. Construction professional insurance cover transparency. I think that's a bad one, but I don't know much about it. And mortgage servicers disperse insurance proceeds. So, looking at the sale of transfer of sodium nitrate, um, not a great bill. Unfortunately, this is creating basically a state level regulation on the sale or transfer of sodium nitrate. Apparently, a state legislator, the name escapes me. I'll try and look it up here real quick. But their child, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, had used the sodium nitrate to overdose, and so now they want to regulate this. Unfortunately, let me see here. Um, So I guess there's a Colorado father. This is an article from CBS News. I'm not sharing the screen on this one, but a Colorado father is trying to get this one regulated. Apparently, the sodium nitrate is used to cure meat. You can get it online in some sporting goods stores. A guy got it and then used it to kill himself, apparently. So that's why they want to regulate it. That's why they want to prevent people, from buying this product, unfortunately. So, I mean, as a liberty-minded individual, libertarian, I'm very much opposed to the idea that the state government should be trying to regulate the sale of this sodium nitrate that does have legitimate purpose, for curing meat. Of course, Colorado's big hunting and agricultural committee. So, Michael, what's your thoughts on this one?
It's another it's another government overreach. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean there is a valid use for sodium nitrates, and it's really up to the individual. I mean, if you want to prevent people from committing acts of self-harm, then you really need to be stepping up from on an individual level and meeting people one-on-one to help prevent acts of self-harm. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't use a government gun to prevent somebody else from doing it. And honestly, it's wildly hypocritical. It's like it's like making suicide a felony. All you're going to do is ensure that people who commit suicide end up uh, going through with it because you're going to go to jail if you fail.
Right. Yeah, so anybody who's interested in opposing this legislation can show up on Thursday, January 25th at 1:30 p.m. House Committee Room 112. So that's at the State Capitol House Committee Room 112. If you're interested in testifying, you can see who's in the Business Affairs and Labor Committee as well and trying to reach out to them to talk to them about why they should not support this bill. My expectation is this bill could be amended. It might pass. It's hard to say exactly from my perspective here. Just a quick question here. I'll jump in the chat. Holly in the chat says no, she hasn't seen that the Kill Committee had passed a bill based on an earlier conversation here, but she's seen reps in the Kill Committee claim that it's not a Kill Committee, and then kill the bill in that committee an hour later. So that's kind of funny. In the chat also we have Jimmy. Would the Department of Regulatory Affairs, so DORA, be outlining their regulatory agenda? Example, any additional state licensing rule revisions being presented during the Smart Government presentation hearing on the 23rd? That's a good question. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to be heard. I'm not sure, honestly. I do not know. So the presentation, there was a presentation from Dora at that meeting, but I have no idea what they'd be talking about personally. If anybody else knows, please jump in the chat. But we'll go ahead and move on from this legislation, this bad bill here. Sticking with, let's see here, Thursday at 1:30 p.m. There is the Senate Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee being heard. There's a lot of different bills on this one. So Thursday, 1:30 p.m. Water projects, biochar, wildlife mitigation efforts, local government disaster related programs, allowing local authorities to enforce the violation of the Noxious Weed Act. Definitely would oppose that as well. But I think the biggest one in this committee hearing that's a bad one is Senate Bill 5, prohibit landscaping practices for water conservation. So this is going to be heard this Thursday in the Senate Agriculture Committee here. And let me just double check where that's being held. That's going to be in Senate Committee Room 352. Senate Committee Room 352 this Thursday at 1:30 p.m. So looking at this bill, Senate Bill 5, prohibit landscaping practices for water conservation. So concerning the conservation of water in the state through the prohibition of certain landscaping practices. So as Michael said, using the gun of the government to prohibit certain types of lawns from being built. Jumping into a little bit of more of a summary of this legislation. So if this bill passes, which it seems like there's a good chance that it will, beginning January 1st, 2025, the bill prohibits local governments or homeowners associations, another good reason not to be in an HOA, from installing, planting, or placing non-functional turf, artificial turf, or invasive plant species on any commercial, institutional, or industrial property or transportation corridor. Further, the Department of Personnel and Administration must not use prohibited landscaping and construction and renovation projects on state facilities. This bill does not apply to artificial turf on athletic fields of play. So, just another example of the state government overreach, trying to ban the installation of turf of grass that they don't like. Michael, what are your thoughts on this one here?
It's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, this is just another step into telling homeowners that they're not going to be able to plant, you know, Kentucky bluegrass on their own lawn, because I mean, you're telling HOAs that they can't do it. I mean, that's just one step removed. I mean, pretty soon nobody's going to be able to plant Kentucky bluegrass, or if they want to do some sort of fescue, because they're going to consider all those types of monostands to be invasive plant species.
Right. Oh, totally. Yeah, definitely some government overreach, a bill that deserves to be opposed. So, Thursday, January 25th, if anybody's interested in these issues, you could show up down there at the state capitol, testify in these committee hearings and talk about, maybe not giving local governments the ability to enforce noxious weeds and, trying to stop this prohibition on our landscaping. So, those legislators there. Is very unfortunate to see Cleve Simpson, a Republican, on this bill as a prime sponsor. So that, of course, that's some bipartisan support, which not that the Democrats don't need that to pass, but definitely makes it a little bit more palatable for them and their constituents, right? It's a good media story they always want to say bipartisan legislation. So unfortunately, Cleve Simpson's supporting this bill. All right, a couple more bills on Thursday, a couple more committee hearings, excuse me. 1:30 p.m., the Senate Health and Human Services. Nothing there too crazy that I was too interested in. Anything there, maybe if anybody has any idea on the Physical Assistant Licensure Compact. I thought that one could be interesting. I didn't do a lot of research on it, but it looks like they would allow licenses, which I don't think we should need anyway, but them to be able to move between states a lot easier. So if you have somebody who had a physician assistant license in another state, allowing them to get a job here in Colorado, saying, well, they're already licensed in another state, they're already qualified for this position. Seems like a good thing, excuse me, in my mind, but at the same time, the licensing probably is unnecessary, if you ask me. Any thoughts on any of these, Michael?
I mean, just to piggyback off of what you're saying about licensure, I just think it's interesting that that they might actually do something that would allow for greater human liberty. But I mean, that's just kind of like a small step in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. I mean, and like you're saying, we shouldn't have to ask the government permission to we won't do what we want anyway.
Yeah, right there with you on that. And then one more committee hearing on Thursday. So Thursday is a very busy day down at the state legislature. A lot of committee hearings being heard, but let's see here. They have a Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, so also a kill committee, if you will. However, this bill probably will pass because if you look who supports it there, but it's a County Veteran Service Offices Administration. So nothing too crazy there. Expect that bill to pass. It seems more of a housekeeping type of bill as well. So I'm going to move on from here. Looks like there's somebody in the chat. Mr. Mayor Aaron Lamb, Mayor of Keensburg, has joined us. Thank you very much for being here. He says in the chat, he is in the healthcare professions. He says Colorado is already a nursing compact state, so I hope and expect this will pass without issue. Going back to that licensing bill, so that's great. So that's really what we got in terms of what's going on this week. Friday there was a couple hearings, but nothing too crazy as well. Going back here. Looks like there's a joint budget committee this Friday, which meets all the time. We don't really talk about them, and the pension review subcommittee. But following up from last week, so of course this video, like I said, is recorded. If any of that information was interesting to you, please check it out. freestatecolorado.com/testify also gives you a real good step-by-step guide in terms of how you can testify down at the state capitol remotely. Really say it's worth showing up in person, but remote, you can always do it as well, make it a little bit easier. So following up from last week, we talked about this Senate Bill 43, authorizing direct-to-consumer sales of raw milk. I know Andy here had some more information about it. It did pass the Senate committee last week. Did get two amendments. I believe one was to lower the fine amount, and then some other change to the language. Didn't seem too much, but Andy, did you want to update us on this one here?
Sure. I mean, I'm almost at the point that I want to kill this bill and start anew next year. I feel like almost like we're trying to polish a turd, but at the end of the day, it's still a turd. There's a lot of problems in it. I mean, the fine was one thing. Raw milk in Colorado is generally sold in half-gallon containers, so $500 per container is going to kill a small dairy really quickly. The language in it, I mean, they said, you know, when it was heard on Halloween that they had moved oversight to Department of Ag, but in reading the language of the bill, it's still very ambiguous. It bounces between CDPHE and Department of Ag, so it's still not made clear. And CDPHE and raw dairy, it's a very contentious relationship, so they really shouldn't have much to do with it. On page 4, section 5, really it just needs to say this contains unpasteurized milk. All the other language is very biased and not true. And then just below that, it addresses the ability of the CDPHE and the commissioner that is appointed. We can make this bill wonderful, get it right where we want it, get it passed, and then CDPHE and this commissioner can go in and change everything after the fact. So, I mean, you almost want to call this bill expanding access to raw milk, but only on paper. A similar bill I just found out was passed in South Carolina, and no farmer is participating in it. They don't want to take the risk. This bill, Senator Roberts did express that this bill does not affect existing herd share law. And he didn't use the term opt-out, but he said you don't have to, as a producer of raw milk, you don't have to participate in this program, and no one I know will. But if they were to say, okay, let's go ahead and do direct to consumer and our herd share. Let's say someone comes along with an unverified complaint, no evidence need be provided. those fines can stack up really quickly and crush the producer, and then it would indirectly affect the herd share program. So that's where I'm kind of like, do I want to risk my access that I have now to be able to buy it at a farmer's market? Again,
Yeah.
it's just the fact that they can change it after the fact is deeply, deeply concerning.
Definitely. I think that'd be one of my biggest fears too, is affecting the cow shares or goat shares that are there. I know the fiscal note for this bill says there's about 250 cow share or goat share operations in Colorado. So the idea that, my worry, of course, that CDPHE would try and force them to register. Hopefully that's
Right.
not the case, like you said, but I don't necessarily trust Senator Roberts really very much at all to even know what's in his own bill. But nonetheless,
Right.
that'd be my biggest worry, is now these cow shares, goat shares that have a way to do it, right? There's a way to distribute raw milk here in Colorado, that this, an attempt to free up the market creates this new registration, new penalty scheme, this new way where now the state government has more power to regulate these entities. That's my biggest fear with this.
Right. And you're looking at, some of these producers, they've got maybe 5 cows. You're not talking about Longmont Dairy that has 500 head of cattle. This is really small operations. And it was really interesting. Roberts kind of reminded me of Pelosi when she said, well, we have to pass the bill and then we'll find out what's in it, because someone asked about, well, what is classified as safe transport? Do we need a refrigerated truck, or can we just use coolers? And that's where he reminded me of Pelosi. He said, well, we've got to work that out. We'll figure that out later after we pass it. It's very concerning.
Right. We'll leave it up to CDPHE to decide, is what it sounds like to me, which is not going to be a good thing. So I'm with you there. I thought this bill was problematic from the get-go. I kind of wish it would have gotten killed, compared to, we just need a straightforward, free the market, totally decriminalize this sale, production, and purchase of raw milk. And we don't need this new regulatory scheme where the state government now has this more powers than it did before this bill. So I think it's
Right.
relatively bad for liberty, but at the same time could, I'm, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at on it.
It needs a lot of work.
Michael, anything you'd like to add on this?
No, I think you guys covered it pretty well.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate. Yeah, go ahead.
It's just disappointing to see us try to make progress with raw milk, and then the bill that they actually do put forth is an absolute nightmare. But
yeah,
session's not over. We could always, make our voices heard and ask for amendments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one could definitely, this could be a great bill to go down and testify on. It doesn't look like they've assigned it to the Appropriations Committee yet. It will be heard next in the Senate Appropriations Committee. A date looks like it hasn't been announced yet, but it could be a good bill to show up, speak on behalf of the agriculture market, the raw milk producers, the cow shares, anybody like that, and really, speak out and try and make sure it does what it's supposed to do. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Andy, for giving us that update on the raw milk bill. We'll go ahead and move on a little bit further. So on Friday there was that's an old slide. Sorry, that was in there from last week. So some of the bills that we've been tracking, looking at the legislative session. Of course, there's a lot more. We really only focus every week on the bills that are going to be being heard in that committee, but nonetheless, keeping an eye on some of these other bad bills. We did talk about this regulate flavored tobacco products last week, Senate Bill 22. There's currently still no committee hearing date yet, but it would allow county commissioners to basically ban the sale of flavored tobacco in their product, and potentially even all cigarettes, from how the bill reads, or all nicotine products, creating this new county by county prohibition scheme, which is absolutely crazy to think about in a state like Colorado, where marijuana is completely legal and becoming more legal in more places, and then they're going after tobacco and going backwards on that. It's shocking. So looking at this one too, this is another bill we're tracking. First week we're talking about it. Senate Bill 65 would basically outlaw people under 18 years old from using a mobile electronic device when driving. So you wouldn't be able to be on your cell phone driving. You'd have to have a hands-free accessory. I mean, just another reason for people to get pulled over, for kids to be penalized, for them to get their license suspended, to pay fines, to go after them. I mean, we all know this is a problem, but creating a new civil penalty to try and stop it isn't necessarily going to, if it's not going to stop it, for one, come on, we know it's not. The kids aren't going to care. For two, it's another reason why law enforcement's pulling people over and potentially creating unsafe situations. Any thoughts on this one, Michael?
You know, I've been thinking about this one. I'm wondering, isn't this already illegal for people to do anyway? Don't they say you're not supposed to be on your device, and if you do, you are going to get pulled over? So what's the difference between this and what we already have on the books? I mean, is it just additional penalties for somebody who's under
Oh,
18?
I'm sorry, I completely misread. You're 100% right. Current law, let me reread this. Current law prohibits an individual who is under 18 years of age from using electronic device while driving. Now, this bill, the bill applies the prohibition to an individual who is 18 years of age or older. So now it'll be everybody. So of course, this insidious form of government where they go after the kids. These kids are driving so dangerous, they're on their cell phones. We got to stop them. Now we're going to go ahead and extend that to every person out there. So that's what it looks like to me. I apologize for not fully reading it, but yeah, it looks like it goes to everybody now if this bill passes.
Yeah. I'm grateful I have CarPlay in my vehicle already, but not everybody does. So that's going to be a problem for a lot of people. And you know that not a lot of people are going to see this law and say, "Oh no, now I'm going to go make my car CarPlay accessible or make it hands-free accessible or anything like that." All they're going to still do what they did before. And
Right,
also, what are they considering hands-free? I mean, if you have an AirPod in and you're talking to somebody on that, is that going to be considered hands-free, or is that going to be still part of your phone?
Well, it's a good
And if you
question. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
and if it's and if that's okay because it's Bluetooth, but you have a if you're using your phone with a connected headphone that plugs in, I mean, is that going to be considered hands-free too? I mean, or is it not? Because I mean, it's still actively using your phone. I mean, where's the line on this thing?
Right. Well, like James in the chat said, headphones are already illegal. You can't drive around in your car with headphones in. But now you wouldn't be able to pull up your phone, pull up directions on your phone, as most people do all of the time. So, I mean, Andy brought up a good point. As all Democrats who are sponsoring this bill, it will pass. I think it is a bad bill for sure, something to be tracked, and the people who behind it and people who vote for it need to be criticized by the voters come election time and some pressure put on them, because we're adults and we should be able, if you're not hurting anybody, you should be able to use a electronic device while you're driving. What if you're at a stoplight? What if you're at a stop sign? What if you're the only person on the road, right? And this is one of those examples where they create a one size fits all legislation. So definitely a bad idea. And what's interesting to me too is the Democrats have been so much about criminal justice reform in this post George Floyd, post Black Lives Matter type of movement, where they're really trying to defund the police and take away the law enforcement's ability to engage with the citizenry and arrest them and potentially create a situation which they're potentially killing somebody. Well, here we go. I mean, it just shows how empty their thoughts are, empty their words are, because now they're creating a situation in which you can almost guarantee more people will be harmed by law enforcement if this bill passes.
I mean, you bring up a good point there. I mean, particularly the defund the police people going around saying ACAB, all cops are bastards and they're racist. Yet those racist cops are the only ones that should have a gun because we need to ban the Second Amendment.
Right. And then they should have more reasons to pull people over and potentially search them, potentially cause some serious issues that can cause some actual harm. So, and of course, as the mayor says, law enforcement, I'm sure, is exempt from this bill because they're sitting there on their laptops in their cars cruising down the highway, right?
Very good point.
Moving on, this bill, of course, is one that is drawing some of the biggest attention on social media. Talked about it last week. House Bill 241039. It has been assigned a committee hearing. This is February 1st at 1:30 p.m. in the House Committee Room 107, the House Education Committee. So this bill would require public schools to use a student's preferred name, even though the parents don't necessarily support it. So if a kid says, "Hey, my name is now blank," you have to call me that. Teachers have to say, "Okay, I guess we will," even if the parents are totally against it. So a lot of people say this bill's an attack on parental rights. It's a challenging bill for parents who maybe have kids suffering from any mental issues. So that's a tough one as well. So February 1st, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people showing up down at the state capitol for this bill. So definitely something we'll talk about next week. We'll talk about a lot more next week. But we'll go ahead and move on here. Another bill that seems to be coming up every year from Epps and Priola, interesting combination there. Overdose prevention centers, 1028, House Bill 1028. No committee hearing yet. Allowing safe injection sites or a place where people can go and inject drugs in your neighborhood. So I'm sure we'll see a lot of opposition from this one as well, but no committee hearing date. We mentioned it last week. A new one, potentially a good one from a pro-liberty perspective, allowing alcohol beverage delivery and takeout. Of course, in this since COVID, that's been a big issue. This is Senate Bill 20. So I'll read the summary here. Current law authorizes certain businesses licensed to sell alcohol beverages at retail by the drink to deliver these beverages or to allow the customer to take these beverages from the licensed premises. Now that's going to repeal on July 1st, 2025. This removes this repeal. They did it temporarily. So right during COVID, they passed these temporary ability for people to deliver alcohol and take alcohol takeout. That's going to expire on July 1st, 2025. This bill removes the repeal, thereby continuing indefinitely the authorization for alcohol beverage delivery and takeout by specified licensees. So probably a pro-liberty bill there. Of course, I don't think alcohol licensing is necessarily should be required, but nonetheless a step in the right direction in terms of letting people order alcohol and have it delivered, which of course could potentially reduce drunk people on the roads. And of course, being able to go to your restaurant and when they have a special on margaritas, you could take one with you for when you get home. So what do you think, Michael?
Yeah, this is one of those few things that is potentially good about from COVID. Everybody was locked down, but at least you could order alcohol for a change. It's probably the only nice thing about COVID, because everything else about it was an absolute nightmare. So, in terms of government regulations,
Yeah,
yeah, I hope this passes.
think it will. Some bipartisan support there, and it'll be interesting to see it progress. So we'll talk about that as we go through the legislative session. Moving on, we're going to see a slew of anti-gun bills as we do every year. The anti-gun people get more and more bold. I'm sure there's other ones out there. This is just the one I saw so far that does have a committee hearing. It is going to be next week. So maybe some short notice there to talk about it on Sunday, but Monday, January 29th in the Judiciary Committee, they're going to basically want to give $1.7 million to the Department of Public Safety. So the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, can investigate illegal activity involving firearms statewide. So maybe, you have a gun store who's selling magazines that are 30 rounds standard capacity instead of the 15 round capacity like they think you should only be able to have. This would give the Colorado Bureau of Investigation to go crack down on gun dealers, really. I mean, that's the big concern with this one, Senate Bill 3. So what do you think, Michael?
Yeah, they're coming after our gun rights. They've made it extremely clear. I mean, last year they had a full-on assault weapons ban that they tried to enact. Thankfully, we were able to kill that. It's still impossible to imagine that we're able to kill a bill with 9 assault weapons bill that had 9 Democrats in that committee. But I mean, it's something that can happen. So I mean, the only thing we can do is shoot our shot. So I think this is one that if you can't make it, at least write in. I know for me personally, I'm going to be on a plane at that time, so I won't be able to make it to this one, but I'm going to at least try to write an email to the Judiciary Committee and just let them know this is absolutely insane. If you need help, I mean, writing an email, write what you think, and if you're having a hard time, you can use something like ChatGPT to assist you. To come up with a few ideas, etc., on why this is a terrible idea. But we got to do what we can to protect our gun rights.
100%. And Tom Sullivan is one of the leading anti-gun voices in the state capitol. So this is the only bill he's sponsored so far this legislative session regarding firearms, but interesting to keep an eye on him and see what other bills he's going to push. So there we go. Yeah, one of the first anti-gun bills we're seeing this year. Of course, I can understand some people say, well, it's not really anti-gun because all you're doing is, telling them to enforce existing laws. But unfortunately, so many of these anti-gun laws are infringements on our freedom, and the state government does not need more money, in my opinion, to come after our Second Amendment rights, because we all know what they're going to use this money for, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so moving on
Oh,
here. Yeah,
one
go ahead.
last thing we can say is all these Democrats that hate Tabor love to say that we don't have enough federal funding. If we don't, or sorry, not federal funding, but we don't have enough funding in the state to fund the programs that we already have. Why are they creating new bills like this that are an absolute waste of money?
Yeah, fair point. I mean, here's another $1.7 million being pulled out of the general fund to go after gun crime. So
Mhm.
moving on, another bill that is a positive bill. Unfortunately, most likely going to be killed, we can imagine, except that the only reason I would have some hope is it's been assigned to the House Finance Committee instead of the kill committee. So I know Jared Polis, the governor, has been pushing for lowering the state income tax. Of course, I'm sure they'll come up with some scheme to reduce our state income tax, but raise taxes somewhere else, I'm sure would be their plan. But as of now, there's not a committee hearing date, something to keep an eye on. I think this one's going to be a good one. So keeping an eye on getting people to testify in support of this bill when it does come up for committee hearing could be a good thing. So perfect. Reduction of state income tax. Would lower it from 4.40 to 4%. Definitely not enough. I would eliminate it to zero, but hey, it's a step in the right direction, right? Everybody deserves a little bit more money on their paycheck, especially if we earned that money. James brings up a good point in here, stealing more from our Tabor refund. I'm sure that would be one of the ways to do it, would lower the income tax rate, but then backfill these government programs with our money that should come back through us through the Taxpayer Bill of Rights refund mechanism. So that is a potential. Civil forfeiture reform. This looks like a great bill. As far as I could tell, I know Representative Kindegraff tried to pass something similar last year, had some issues with the language, didn't do exactly what he wanted it to do, but it has been assigned to the House Judiciary Committee, not the Kill Committee. So hopefully there's an appetite for civil forfeiture reform. Civil asset forfeiture has been a problem for many years, and for a long time, Colorado legislators have been working to reform civil asset forfeiture unsuccessfully for the most part. There's been some progress made over the past 10 years, but this would be a good one. So we'll keep people updated on the progress of this bill. Mayor Aaron Lamb in the chat asks, which committee is the Kill Committee? It's the State, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee. For the most part, bills that the Democratic majority wants to kill, they assign to the State, Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee. Stacked, of course. I mean, Democrats have a super majority, so they send it there and they kill the bill. Bills they don't like. So sometimes there are some bills that get assigned to that committee who have a legitimate reason to, because they deal with state or military veterans affairs, something along those, specifically like elections, campaign finance. They should all go there, but unfortunately, not is always the case. And then going forward here, another bill we're tracking from Stephanie Luck, one of the Liberty leaders down at the legislature. This one, as you can see, here's a perfect example. This was, well, it does have to do with state issues, so I think it could be assigned to the right committee, but my guess is they're going to kill this bill. Publishing bill drafts online before the session, kind of allowing legislators to get their bills out there in front of the public sooner to create more transparency, more government interaction, or more interaction between the people and the government, and kind of more information for stakeholders out there. In the chat, James says there should be a push to directly link a reduction in our property tax to the budget. And anytime they go over, we get a reduction. That would be awesome. It'd be great to see a penalty for the state government. If they mess up, we can get a reduction in our taxes. That would be great. Well, perfect. Well, anything else? I'll open up the Michael, anything else from you? And then we can open it up to anybody else out there who wants to maybe bring up any other legislation that we're not aware of yet or haven't been talking about yet.
I don't think I have anything additionally at this time.
Perfect. Well, if anybody wants to jump on here and speak, you can raise your hand, or you should be able to unmute yourself, or I can unmute. I think I can ask to unmute if anybody wants to jump in here. All right, so it doesn't sound like it. We'll keep doing these calls every Sunday night. It's the same Zoom link, 7:30 to about 9 or whenever we end. Of course, we're going to get into some really big bills coming up sooner. These videos will also be posted on YouTube for Free State Colorado YouTube channel, and then we are working on getting them live streamed as well. Andy wanted to bring up what's going on in Lakewood. It doesn't directly relate, but I think if there's nothing else going on, go ahead, Andy, and talk about what's going on in Lakewood.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that there is a meeting coming up on February 12th, 7:30 p.m. And they are getting ready to vote on making Lakewood a sanctuary city. And they're going to fill all of the schools that are empty due to lack of enrollment. Thank you, homeschoolers, with migrants. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Illegal aliens.
Yeah, if you're in Lakewood, definitely pay attention. Wheat Ridge did push back. The citizens of Wheat Ridge had a big meeting. Got a lot of public outcry about Wheat Ridge trying to do the same thing of turning some older hotels into migrant or homeless housing, and got enough pushback where they decided not to go through with it. So we'll see what happens in Lakewood. And wanted to share one link in the chat there. There's a wonderful group here in Colorado called the Colorado Union of Taxpayers. 100% recommend you become a member. It's $25 a year. They also have an email newsletter every Monday morning. They basically go through all the legislation in the Capitol and discuss if it's good or bad. Great resource. You should definitely sign up for that if you want to continue to track legislation. They're an amazing group. But this Thursday, at the Colorado Automobile Dealers Association building, CADA, they're having a legislative kickoff event. So should be really good. Learn what to expect from the legislature this year. It's very reasonable. It's $25 if you're not a member. But I'm going to try and make it. Hope people can make it down there. Drinks, hors d'oeuvres, discussion, talking about what's going on. What's going on down there at the state capitol. And I'm sure some of the legislators, some of our pro-liberty legislators will probably be down there as well. So definitely check it out, and I hope to see you there if hope to see you there if you're in the area. So perfect. Anything else? Anybody else got anything?
Quick thing for me real quick. I was gonna say thank you for that chat side. Is there any other good ways to track legislation to sign up that I don't know about?
There are two wonderful groups, Colorado Union of Taxpayers that I just mentioned. I'll share their main website in the chat, coloradotaxpayer.org. 100% they do weekly updates. I think they're starting tomorrow is their first email is going to go out tracking the legislation. They send that email to every legislator in the Capitol. So, and they can see who opens it through email tracking, right? So that's pretty good. They do a phenomenal job. The other one is Liberty Scorecard Colorado. I just shared that in the chat as well. It is run by the Colorado Liberty Republicans. They track legislation based on individual rights, free market, and limited government. They also rate the legislators every year, so it's really interesting to see. But they do an amazing job as well. Sign up for their email list, donate to them. Two wonderful groups that do a great job tracking legislation: Colorado Union of Taxpayers and the Liberty Scorecard Colorado. If you go to freestatecolorado.com, I've done interviews with both Kim Munson, who's the president of Colorado Union of Taxpayers, and Sue Moore, who's the director of the Liberty Scorecard Colorado, and you can learn all about them there. They're awesome organizations. Of course, Rocky Mountain Gun Owners does a great job of tracking the anti-gun legislation and any pro-gun legislation that goes on at the state capitol. That should just be rmgo.org. But those two are probably the biggest ones in terms of website or like email newsletters you should sign up for is Liberty Scorecard and the Colorado Union of Taxpayers.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, James. Anybody else? Perfect. Well, awesome. Well, hey, appreciate everybody for jumping in. I hope we can really have voices heard at the state capitol this year, hold our bad authoritarian legislators accountable, and support our pro-liberty leaders. So we'll see you again next week. Of course, follow the Libertarian Party of Colorado on Twitter, at LPCO on Twitter, and Free State Colorado on Twitter as well. We'll be talking about stuff throughout the week there. So perfect. So thank you, everybody. This video will go live here on YouTube shortly if you want to share it with anybody. So thank you very much. Appreciate everybody.
Hey, actually, something just rolled in. Jim Wiley just sent this over to me. There's an opportunity to give testimonial against Jenna Griswold. What's going on with the election on January 22nd?
So tomorrow.
And that's in the SMART committee.
Oh.
That
So
just
Jim,
came in within like the last minute or two.
nice. So Jim Wiley, I know is involved with some of the election integrity lawsuits and everything, and definitely trying to hold Griswold accountable. So in terms of tomorrow, I'm guessing that would be which
It's in the kill committee, unfortunately, but
well, that makes sense because the state Veterans and Military Affairs Committee deals specifically with election issues. That's part of their legitimate responsibility, not being a kill committee. So they are going to be having a public testimony there tomorrow, and apparently some people are planning on showing up and testifying against Griswold. Is that the case?
yeah, that's what it sounds like. And the specific hearing item is Joint State Veterans Affairs Committee public testimony on this Department of State.
So that's tomorrow, Monday, January 22nd, upon adjournment of the Senate and the House in the old Supreme Court, room there up. I believe that's on the second floor. So there's a Smart Government Act presentation from the Department of State. So Jenna Griswold will probably be there providing this presentation, and then of course you can show up and speak out against her. So I appreciate you sharing that, Michael, and of course appreciate James Wiley for sending that over. So
yeah,
opportunity to try and hold Griswold accountable tomorrow, speak out against her, and call her out for her bad behavior. That's pretty cool. I'll share the link
absolutely.
in the chat to the agenda that I just pulled up on the legislative website for anybody interested. So that's the agenda, the PDF agenda for that committee hearing tomorrow. Perfect. Awesome. Well, I'm glad we hung out for a little bit extra and got that out there. So wonderful. We'll appreciate everybody. We'll talk to you next week and go from there.
Thanks, everybody.